Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 17 February meeting of the Waste Advisory Group here in Gore this morning. Apologies, we have one apology from Barry Stewart and no others. I'm aware that Christine Menzies is coming up online. If I can have a mover and a seconder for the apology, please. Ian moved, Rob second. All those in favour say aye. Carried. Are there any declarations of interest? Appears to be none. Are there any constraints from people today in terms of the way we've got the agenda? Doesn't seem to be, so we can just deal with the agenda as it is. The first item is on page 3, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the Waste Advisory Group held on the 18th of November. Are there any errors or omissions that people would like to highlight, please? There appears to be none, and so if I could have a mover that those be accepted as true and correct. Neville Phillips, thank you. Ian Pottinger, second. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. The first item on the agenda is on page 11, the WasteNet Strategic Plan Execution and Activity Update. And is there anything, Fiona, that you want to add to the report?
One of the main elements to highlight is the government announcement which came out late last year, around the 18th of December, and that was to advise that elements of the draft waste strategy wouldn't be progressed. So there are a number of elements in there relating to provision of services such as organics and also targets for territorial authorities to achieve. So those won't be being progressed in the draft strategy. So obviously has an impact on the work stream and forecast workload for WasteNet as well.
Are there any questions or feedback on the report, please? There is one, what I hope is a wee error on page 13. Under the heading of number 2, Adoption March 2026, that talks about workshops and drafting of the waste minimisation plan occurring from November 2026. So it should be November this year. And what's set out in that report, I guess, in terms of several matters that are on page 13, is that we're going to get an update on the Section 17A review at our April meeting, and then I guess mapping a way forward, and that'll need to go to councils in June. Yep. So are all the council meeting days locked in?
At this stage, we do have so we've got workshops occurring in March. Those are all scheduled for the first week of March with each of the individual councils around the Section 17A. And then depending on the outcome for this meeting, they'll either occur in April or June. So what it highlights there is how that Section 17A review and business case development for our service contracts links in with the waste management and minimisation plan development. And that's why there are 3 options presented in this paper for the waste minimisation and management plan progressing. Either we can proceed as originally scheduled, and that would have adoption with a target date of the end of July this year, in recognition that the elections are coming up at the latter part of this year. The second alternative presented there is to defer that slightly until after the elections, and that does give the benefit of allowing that Section 17A and business case information to flow in, which is obviously quite a critical element of the waste management and minimisation plan, because we don't want 2 different pathways going off depending what our services are going to be provided to the community. The third option there is to defer further again and incorporate the waste management and minimisation plan into the annual plan process in 2026. So that was the thought process behind those three different options and how they would link up with that service contract.
Before throwing it open, I wonder if there's a fourth option, and that is for this current year for us to actually prepare drafts for the next round of councillors to deal with. What's your thought on that?
That's definitely an option. We already have the waste assessment fairly well drafted. It's just going through an internal review at this end at the moment. So we've got the information that we would need to draft it. I guess it's only, yeah, we'll just have that linkage coming through from the Section 17A, which we should have as well. So we could meet those timelines to get a draft.
Members, I'll throw it open for your discussion and feedback, please.
This, I guess, 15 years on WasteNet, it's a bit like Groundhog Day, actually, going back through this with the government. And, you know, obviously you have to acknowledge a change of government, but right from 2010 with the inception of the recycling and everything, we were sort of, you know, hopefully getting on track, and we seem to be 15 years on, and we still are looking for a direction. And now, you know, obviously we will come to it later on in the agenda about the recycling contamination and stuff like that. Well, it all goes back to product stewardship. If you're selling an item that can't be recycled, it's going to end up either in the wrong bin or wherever. And this is what I guess I keep repeating this, the government doesn't address, is the basis from where all our rubbish comes from, and then we've got to find a space to we deal with the problem after that. So I guess we've got two choices here. It says either in recommendation 2, either endorse or A, endorse, or B, direct the earlier one. So the actual recommendation from staff is B, is it?
Well, there's also a C and D now.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the status quo, if we've got everything, you know, with the bin inspections coming on, and we've got a very efficient landfill, we've got the issues with the ETS, that's another issue to sort out later on. I mean, business as usual for us, I think, is quite good. We don't need to fret about the green bin. We don't need to fret about taking glass out, you know. So I'm keen on whatever just keeps us going on a steady forward course, and I don't know what the government's going to come up with. I don't have any faith, I can tell you that.
And so what that points to then is my suggestion in terms of let's keep progressing so that we have a draft in this current year, which expresses our views and gives something for the structure that we have for next year.
I think
look at.
If we have, you know, as long as we don't impinge on the staff workload, you know, that they're taken away from other work. Yes, yeah.
Rob, what's your view?
Thanks, Keith. I just missed the start. I was multitasking, just getting Christine. So Christine's currently on my phone because she's struggling to get in. So the C and D that you referred to, can you just remind me what those were? Seeing as I was.
So the C is what Fiona was describing, I guess, of really putting everything on hold until next year. D was let's keep progressing this year so that we have a draft available. Okay, thank you, Neville. So D is that let's keep progressing this year so that we prepare a draft which really sets out our thoughts and considerations so that the incoming WAG or whatever form it has a starting point rather than having to go through all the background stuff as well.
Yeah, that's certainly the option that I'm in favour of, keeping the momentum going, and it'd be remiss of us, I think, to press pause on the whole thing, even given that there's only 8 months left of this term. But I think we should, utilise the momentum that we've got and to Rangi's previous experience on WasteNet as well to build on all of that and come up with a bit of a draft position to feed into it. That's where I sort of tend to sit.
Does Christine have anything to add?
Do you have anything to add?
No, I'd be of the same view that we keep the momentum going. We want to ensure that we're making an informed decision, and that will take due time. Yeah, thank you.
Right, Neville?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I'm in the same agreement with everybody else, because I'm just mindful of the contracts coming up in 2027, that the workload is discontinuous and not lumped in one big pile for them. So, yeah, no, I'm going to agree with that.
So there's a unanimous view around the table then. So I think there's the two motions that need to be put that I'll move is that we receive the strategic plan execution and activity update, and direct that the regional waste and minimisation plan program is advanced with a target draft date of 1 October. Does 1 October make sense? That's prior to the elections.
What's the fastest the staff can work on it? Because that's getting quite late into our ability to even kind of vote point of view. But I mean, if the draft could be done by the 30th of July, if that's a reasonable target, then that would make more sense to me.
Neville?
Yeah, I've been in the mind for as Rob just said, that if you're leaving it to October, everyone's going to be thinking, oh, they're trying to push through different, aspects before the election. I think if we can get it done prior to that, it'll be better.
Okay, so you're happy with any constraints on staff time for B? No. Okay, so then we have, I've moved that we receive the report and under B, direct the regional waste management and minimisation plan program advance with a target. It'll be a target draft date rather than adoption date of 30 July 2025. So if I can have a seconder for that, please, Rob. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, Christine. Item 5, WasteNet Education Communication Activity Update on page 18. It's a report for receiving. Fiona, is there anything that you want to add?
So obviously it does cover a period which is a little bit quieter just by nature in terms of the Christmas holidays and the like, but there are a few interesting statistics through there around the website and I guess the impact that the bin inspection campaign has had, not only on making people aware of the upcoming reintroduction of that program, but just around good recycling in general. So we've seen that flow through to our website statistics and things as well. So it's been an interesting couple of months from that perspective.
So any feedback or comments from members, please? I had thought that the pretty coloured diagram actually went with this item, and I see that it was the one before. So that's that. I'm not too sure if anyone's got any comments on what was on page 17 of the agenda. I guess the only red lines that showed up there were recruitment of a data officer and Tirewise implementation. So I think just to note those two. Ian.
Again, from experience, I think the education at the kids level is the way to get in. You're never going to educate the adults.
Yeah.
But if the kids and through school programs and stuff like this, and even the schools are practicing what we're preaching, so they see it all happening, then they get home and then they tell their parents, hey, you can't do that. I think that's the absolute best way, and just keep doing it. And hopefully that generation then will, when they become homeowners and so on and so on.
The emphasis is on primary and preschool. Should we be thinking about secondary school level as well?
Absolutely. I believe that. You're in that young adult thing, and they are very much consumers themselves. You know, they're starting to earn money, you know, part-time jobs and stuff, and they are right in the mix of it as young adults.
And at secondary school, that's when people develop an environmental conscience, is the way I'd describe it. And so as part, I guess, of moving forward, is that something that can be given some thought, please?
Yep.
Any other feedback, comments? So we can have a mover and a seconder, please, then, that we receive the report Waste Education Communications Activity Update. Ian moved. Second, Neville. All those in favour say aye. Against, carry. Item number 6 is on page 22, WasteNet Key Conformance Indicators Update. Fiona, anything to add?
Just to provide some background around the clarification and calculation for the key performance indicator around the contamination rate. So it explains in the paper how that's historically been calculated and how we have tried to refine that calculation to better reflect what is the contamination related to council provided services. So that's been applied for this financial year, and that's the way, if that's acceptable, that it will be calculated going forward, just to provide that greater clarity.
Feedback and comment, Ian?
How do we relate, you know, this contamination stuff to the economic climate at the time? Because obviously, you know, if times are tough, you're theoretically buying less, or, you know, especially more consumer, you know, frivolous goods or whatever. And I just wondered, do we put an index in there relating to whatever Burrell or whoever, who's the outfit that provide us with what the state of the nation is?
So we do that for volumes, and we do see a direct correlation between volumes, but it's not something that we've done for contamination, so I could definitely do that, yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a question, like I note, last year we had that spike, which I think was due to Blue Cliffs from previous discussions. So the poultry farm that's gone in there, is that reflected in this, or is this just purely council contributed waste?
So this is just what comes in under the WasteNet agreement. So the WasteNet agreement only covers waste that's generated from within Southland. Things coming in from outside the region aren't captured.
Cool, thank you.
It also includes material coming from Clutha District Council. Is there any encouragement to them to tell us or provide records?
Yes, we haven't had that, so it's not reflected in the volumes graph, but it is, that was why we clarified around the contamination rate, because we do see that data coming through from Recycle South. So we haven't specifically asked for any information from Clutha at this stage, over and above what we get through from Recycle South in terms of volumes.
Do you know if it's something that they monitor themselves?
I am not sure, but we could have that conversation with them.
Because if we're trying to make improvements to our own backyard, I think we should be encouraging anyone who's contributing to what's happening at the landfill to equally join the battles, as it were, to make some improvements. Any other feedback? Ian?
Just one thing I've noticed over the last, I guess over summer and a bit earlier is, and I don't want to say that I go to bottle stores a lot, but and even in supermarkets, the change away from the small bottles of either soft drink or alcohol to cans. There are definitely more, your choice is getting limited to what you can get in glass, and it's definitely more in cans. So I'm just wondering if we're noticing that, or is it too early yet? It's something I've really only noticed over the last 6 months. But is that coming through, that less glass, more more aluminium in the recycle chain, or is that?
It's a trend that's been noticed nationally, but it's not something that we've done a deep dive into regionally, but it'll be interesting to look at. We can definitely. Yes, yeah, yeah, just with craft beers and the likes, yeah.
I can offer that Pakeke Lions is a small recycler, receive more cans than their waste. Sorry, Christine, please repeat that.
I wonder if I could ask a question, please. Sorry, it's hard to sort of know when to come in relation to the contamination rate, because for this year you've taken out the commercial volumes and also the that coming in from Clutha. So could you just summarise what the impact of that has been? Because I'm assuming that that was in last year's data.
Yes, and it does shift. It only makes a small adjustment to the results. It's not significant. It's by a percentage or two, but we just thought it was better to have that accuracy going forward, especially now that that Recycle South are receiving material from Clutha District Council, just to make sure that what we are tracking and reporting on is just Southland specific information.
You know, that's good, thank you. I'm just wondering what the impact overall was on that, so thank you.
I guess the other question that needs to be asked is our target too high, since we're not achieving it?
I would like to say for the contamination rate that we are optimistic it will come down now that bin inspections have been reintroduced.
So how does it compare to elsewhere, do you know?
It is higher than a lot of other places in the country. I know Christchurch, for example, gets around 5 to 10 following the introduction of bin inspections after COVID up there. So we're definitely at the higher end of the scale for contamination.
Ian?
Look, just a question regarding contamination. Do we deem a glass object in the recycling bin as contamination, or just poor education, just a poor choice? Is that officially counted as contamination, glass in the recycling?
So these statistics are done by weight. So it looks at how many kilograms of recyclable material coming through the recycling stream is then diverted to landfill at the end.
So glass is rejected then, so it would include glass?
So the glass that's diverted for crushing and use in aggregates and the like isn't counted. But
it's not counted?
No, but if there's contamination in that glass, for example, bottle caps and things like that, that is counted as part of the contamination.
Okay, so continuing the glass is still diverted before the recycling stage?
Yes, yeah.
Gotcha. No, that's good.
It was one of my learnings late last year in terms of taking the tops off the bottles. And is that something that is publicised well?
So it was included in the rollout when curbside standardisation came, but it's probably something that hasn't really been picked up that well by members of the public. And I guess that's one of the advantages of doing bin inspections is notes are being left for people to say, please remove your lids. So you might get a green tag, which we can talk about for the relevant paper. You might get a green tag, but if you've left your lid on, you'll get a note saying, please remove your lids, to start to build that education and awareness, because it isn't widespread at the moment, I would say.
Any further discussion? Otherwise, can I have a mover for all three of the recommendations that we received the report? Note the clarification and calculation basis for the council service recycling contamination, key performance indicator, and notes the materials discarded, waste to landfill and diversion data and trends. Ian, thank you. Rob, second. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Item 7 on page 26, the WasteNet half-yearly financial report. Fiona, anything to add?
No, nothing further to what is in the report.
Open it up for comment and feedback then, please, gents and ladies.
Keith, just the grant line, which is a negative 12,938. So is that an expense or a negative income, or just querying that?
So that relates to the funding that was received from Ministry for the Environment for the organic study. So they paid the full amount upfront in the F24 year, and due to the scope of it, a partial refund of the upfront payment. So that's the 12K that went back to them in F25.
Cool, thank you.
I thought the accrued expenditure 1.7 was a bit high. Can you just comment on that? Is that normal?
Yeah, and it's mostly driven by accrual and timing of when things are accrued. So it's very much an accounting element as opposed to an actual expenditure.
Is Christine trying to add something or talking to someone else? All right, any other comments or feedback, please, in terms of the half-yearly financial report? So I think the intent is that we'll get this at each of our meetings now, which is good to see. Okay, so if I can have a mover then that we receive the report from Ian. Moved. Second from Rob. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Now, item 8 on page 29, the aged debtor process improvements. Fiona, anything to add?
Just to note that this was circulated to the relevant account holders in January this year. So in terms of moving forward with implementing the process, obviously subject to this meeting, this will be our first month where we start to actually apply some of the things that are outlined in this in terms of seeing the effects. But
so in the appendix, step 3 refers to account over 60 days, which I'm sure is meant to be over 90 days. And question is, do people get charged interest?
we have not been charging interest for overdue accounts, no.
Are people happy with that? Yeah.
The first rule of thought when you state that is we are acting as a bank. So we instead of them having to borrow money to pay us, they're getting interest-free loan. So then we become, yeah, okay. We don't worry about the WasteNet people. We don't get caught there. Yeah, it's a tough one. I think I'd leave that up to any accountants in the room here. Yeah. They're normally more brutal. Yeah.
Bob.
Thanks. I know I've sort of commented on this a couple of times, and it's good to see this work happening. And I think, given that there are some debtors that are well in excess of and what would be deemed as an acceptable time frame, I think having a look at an interest component would be worthwhile, and also potential suspension of service. I think what would be handy from a measurement point of view is if in that previous financial report we had a breakdown in the debtors as to how far the days are outstanding, just so we can gauge the success of the work that's been done. But yeah, I thank you for getting this work done, because I think this is going to help in terms of cash flow and everything as well, and to Rangi's point that we're not getting used as a bank. So, thank you.
The provisions are there to charge interest. Is there a desire to give some direction to staff, or to leave it as their discretion, which is the current feedback?
Thank you, Mr Chair. No, I think that we should just leave it with the staff and perhaps a bit of a stern letter be sent that saying that if your payment's not pending, your interest will be added on, accumulated, and I think that may jolt the memory of them to start paying it.
We have other examples where 1 day late with your rates can incur a 10% penalty. So it does happen. So I guess there's no direction coming from the WAG, but I guess a reminder that it's a tool that's available, and in some circumstances it may well be appropriate for it to be used.
Interest into that. We've advised out to those people who are debtors what we intend to do. I think it would be useful to add on that a penalty would that be similar to what the rates penalty would be? Why would it be different? It'd be interesting to hear back, but agree that the staff should pursue that option.
I think also just reflecting on the added time cost and staff chasing up accounts as well. There's quite often a late payment fee. It's not uncommon in even power and phone bills and everything, so that might be worth exploring too.
And on credit cards, there's a set amount. So I think, yeah, it's something that the staff level needs to be thought about. That's fair and reasonable, but making a point. Ian?
I think you've got two types here of offenders. You've got the accidental offender who goes, oh, you know, I made a mistake, and then you've got that other person who just pushes it all the time because we're soft. Yeah, so, you know, you can understand the odd one, but if people are consistent, then no, we can't accept that.
I think that's a fair discussion on that, so can I have a mover and seconder, please, that we receive and note the report Age Debtor Progress Improvements Overview. Thank you, Neville. Moved. Second, Ian. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Item 9, Recycling Bin Inspections and Enforcement Programme Reintroduction Update, page 32. Fiona, anything to add?
Only to provide an update which wasn't available at the time of drafting the report, and that we are in the second week now of doing inspections, so have initiated the program successfully, which is pleasing.
And I understand there's some preliminary overview that you can share with us later, I think, because it's private type information that's there, so yeah, we'll talk about that a bit more later. So any feedback or comments, please? The key issue here is the three-strike system. So I'd like some feedback on views in terms of the recommendation that we introduce it from 31st of March, which will be for the Invercargill and Southland areas, because Gore doesn't have recycling and not an option at this stage. The Mayor of the affected district, Rob?
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, I think I support it. I think, yeah, the education piece first, and then if people are still not playing ball, 3 strikes is an extra opportunity to make amends, and then after the 3rd strike, I think, and I believe Grant might want to add a bit of comment from our perspective from an operational point of view as well.
Grant?
Yeah, Southland District sort of has we've gone down a 3 strikes system. We can't enforce it, but we've put out a letter to people saying this is the options, and to be fair, once they normally get the first one, they generally come right. You very rarely go past a second, and we haven't done a 3rd. So once they get that education and know what's happening, they get their act together.
So the legal advice that the staff have had have given the green light to the system that it is enforceable, and that is important. Ian, from an Invercargill point of view?
Well, this is from a left field view. Is that okay? Say the person gets 3 strikes and you're out. Because it's a targeted rate on their rates, do they then get rate relief for not having that service?
They still get the service with the red bin, but not the recycling
No,
bill.
but do they? Yeah, they don't get the service, but do they get charged in their rates?
Well, they are getting the service. It's that everything has to go into the red bin while they, until such time that they get the recycling bin back. That's my understanding.
Yeah, but that's a reduced capacity in litres, 120 to 240. I just wonder how that. What do the legal people say about that?
So that was the legal opinion that we've had, that as long as we continue to provide our service, capable of taking it.
No.
In terms of rates, I guess the services continue to be provided, they're just choosing not to use it appropriately. So if at the moment what we've done for the 3 strike system, or what we're proposing to do, there's no monetary penalties associated with it, nor with the return of the bin once it has been removed. But it's that you need to sign and return a service agreement saying that you will use the service. So the service is there to be used if people choose to use it appropriately.
Just a further comment, I think you wouldn't want to provide incentive for people to save rates by contaminating their bins to get it removed.
Good point. All right, any further discussion? So if I can have a mover and a seconder, please, that we receive the report and endorse the recommendation to proceed with implementing a 3-strike system from 31 March 2025. Ian, moved. Second, Rob. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Item 10, page 35, Regional Solid Waste Bylaw Development Drivers. Fiona, anything further to add, please?
Just to clarify around the recommendations, so you'll see at the bottom under 2 that there's a blank line, and the intention of that is to provide space to capture any specific feedback. So matters that might be able to be incorporated under that were things where there was a particular focus for the region, such as event management plans, construction management plans, or multi-unit development, those kind of things where there was a particular focus or issue that needed to be addressed by the bylaw. So that was the intention behind that one.
When it comes to event management plans, there's generally, this is on council land, so there is the responsibility of the individual councils, if it's appropriate, to actually ask for an event management plan for the waste. So why wouldn't that be in the bylaw?
And it's definitely something that's appropriate to be dealt with through the bylaw. Some regions don't see it as a priority, and that it doesn't generate a large amount of waste, or it doesn't create a large nuisance problem for them, so it's not a focus. But if that was an issue or a focus area for Southland, then it's definitely appropriate to be captured in the bylaw.
I think of the bikes on the beach recently in Invercargill with several thousands. And I would have anticipated that something would be done for that day. We had an event here on the weekend for the Athletic Mind in a council reserve. And we have things like the field days and other events that are extremely large. And at the field days a couple of years ago, it was surprising how much the different bins were being used. So I see that in part also as part of the education program, that if it isn't being implemented for events like that, or if it is being implemented, it's just reinforcing messages to a large number of people. So in terms of the overall report, any comment or feedback, please? Rob?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think the key word for this is the regional piece, and I think the advantage of us working regionally in this aspect with the bylaws and getting consistency across whether you're in Gore, Southland or Invercargill will be very beneficial. It will save double handling across our councils. And just, you've mentioned events, but just also thinking in terms of fly tipping, which is a common issue across all of our areas, and having some legal ability to get in behind it and not having different rules between council areas, I think would be really beneficial as well. So I certainly support it, and I think, yeah, in particular some of those areas, it can't come fast enough.
Particularly at a time when councils are looking at options of working together. From an administrative point of view, I see this as an excellent stepping stone to illustrate the way that we can do that, as well as responding to both what I see as some political issues and pressures being put on councillors, as well as environmental outcomes. So in terms of that, are you wanting to move what we have in front of us here in any form? I think Ian was about to put up his hand first. No? Okay.
Yep, no, happy to move that we carry on and work on the bylaw development process. So I guess that's 2A.
Move. Do we have a seconder? Ian, thank you. Any discussion on that, Neville?
No, I'm right, Mr. Chairman. I believe that it's a good aspect to be joined together, and I think in the long term it's going to save money by all three councils. Okay,
Christine, anything to add?
To endorse the principle of consistency across all councils, and for that to be seen by our ratepayers as well, I think is important.
Excellent thought. So we have a move and a seconder. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Which brings us to the end of the agenda. There being nothing further, I will close the public